Wow, where do I even start with this one? A blockbuster record that defined its time as much as any album ever could, with 4 huge hits, including one that's become the most played song in the history of recorded music. But in all, this record is pretty dark. In fact, its main themes are obsession, surveillance, control, murder, jealousy, revenge, ownership. I've got a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer from the band to help tell the story of a record that broke up the band, even brought them to full-on fistfights, but the producer of the album said that tension made it the masterpiece it is. The story of a classic with one of its creators is coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time, especially today. You know, if you remember sporting a bandana back in the day, or remember the bandana phase of the great 80s, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the red button and click the bell so you always know when our latest and greatest come out. We got some great stuff coming up with some real legends. I'm excited to bring you another episode from our series Revelations, where featured artists go deep on their greatest songs and their greatest albums. Stories you really won't get anywhere else. You'll learn something new. We have a great show today with a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame drummer on his band's biggest selling record. Not only his band's biggest selling record, but one of the biggest selling albums in the history of this planet. It's a dark masterpiece to be sure. I'm talking about the 1983 juggernaut, Synchronicity, by the biggest band in the world at that time, The Police. The album had 4 big hits, including the #1 song of that year, 1983, Every Breath You Take. That went to #1 for 8 weeks. King of Pain hit #3 on the Hot 100. It went to #1 on the rock charts as well. Wrapped Around Your Finger, that hit #8. And Synchronicity 2 hit #16. The album was stacked from top to bottom with classic songs. And as we tell the story of the record, we have drummer and co-writer of several of the songs, Stuart Copeland, with us. Man, this album was dark. From the stalker anthem, Every Breath You Take, to the mind of a serial killer in Murder by Numbers, which actually is included on the album but was not part of the original vinyl track list, but it's now on every copy. Plus there's the control and revenge of Wrapped Around Your Finger. This one's deep and haunting. A couple of quick observations. During the recording of Every Breath You Take in particular, Sting and Copeland came to blows with each other. Producer Hugh Padgham nearly quit the project right there. Padgham would go on to say, the tension in the room was sometimes horrible, but in many ways that tension is what ended up making it such a good album. Every Breath You Take was a point of contention between Sting and Stuart Copeland. Sting wanted to use a drum machine. Stuart Copeland wanted the real thing. I mean, you got one of the greatest drummers ever. Why mess with it, in my opinion? Copeland eventually prevailed, and the song had to be assembled entirely from overdubs. Pretty tough to put together. In a 1983 interview with the New Musical Express, Sting said about the stalker anthem, and I quote, "I think it's a nasty little song. Really rather evil. It's about jealousy and surveillance and ownership. I think the ambiguity is intrinsic in the song however you treat it because the words are so sadistic. On one level, it's a nice long song with the classic relative minor chords, and underneath there's this distasteful character talking about watching every move. I enjoy that ambiguity. Actually, he would see the common misinterpretation of this song up close, and very quickly after it was released as a song, he talked about watching Andy Gibbs sing it as a happy little duet on TV, and he would describe that performance as very loving and totally missing the point. Sting would say, I could still hear the words, which aren't about love at all. I pissed myself laughing. Of course, how many couples have walked down the aisle to this song? I mean, does anyone listen to lyrics anymore? Or back in the day? And then you have Murder by Numbers, written by Sting and Stuart Copeland. I understand Andy had a lot to do with it as well, the jazz guitar. It may be even creepier than Every Breath You Take. Now, Sting wrote in his book Lyrics, and I quote, A few years later, this volcano would destroy half of Montserrat. That's where they recorded it. But on this day, it was just bubbling quietly and throwing up a strong smell of sulfur. The words to Murder by Numbers just formed in my head, and that pungent smell of sulfur continued to cling to the song. Jimmy Swaggart, the TV evangelist, publicly cited it as an example of the devil's work. He condemned it colorfully, while entirely missing its irony and its satirical content. The devil indeed, end of quote. And of course, sulfur is associated with the devil and demons and folklore going back to the beginning of time. Yeah, Jimmy Swaggart actually called this song one that was written by the sons of Satan, the Police. Then a few years later, the hypocrite was caught in a sex scandal himself. So let's get into this interview with Stuart Copeland. The story of Synchronicity. Here he is with the story. Well, Synchronicity in '83, you guys were, not arguably, but you were the biggest band on the planet in that moment. You released your biggest selling album, like I said, reaching Beatle-like heights. This is where things were starting to implode a little bit, if you're reading the history at all.
No, they started imploding before that.
There was a lot of turmoil in the band, actually in your personal lives, I understand. Marriages breaking up and the pressure of,
Not mine.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah, I was lucky. At least I had my wife who was able to hold my hand during the trauma of recording those albums. But both Sting and Andy had not only trauma in the studio, but trauma at home too. And we've been in therapy, band therapy, and we now understand what the conflict was all about, and was all for good, honest reasons. And we appreciate that conflict produced a result that we're very proud of.
And now also the solo career looming of Sting and everything. But as I understand it, work started at the Golden Eye Estate, Ian Fleming, and then it finished at Montserrat. Tell me about this record, starting with some of the hits, Every Breath You Take, #1 smash, 8 weeks. What did you think of it? You had to know that was going to be a massive hit.
Well, I had two feelings. One, this is a hit, and any fun that I have with it will ruin it. And so I had to be very careful not to ruin it. And so the drum part is nothing to write home about, although it is very subtly very cool. And a lot of things that you don't really are not in your face. The gong swell, the timpani. All these elements that are like Andy's guitar playing, not Guitar Hero or Drum Hero stuff, but actually kind of effective, but way behind. This is one song where that lyric, even I heard that lyric and thought that's just a huge hit. Every step you take, I'll be watching you. When Sting brought it in, it was the chords and that lyric. Okay, that's a hit. But then Andy said, guys, we're actually a guitar band. So Andy put his head down and figured out that guitar riff, and that, of all the riffs we played, that one's Andy's. And so he came up with that really distinctive guitar version of those chords, the voicing. That's what Andy was really good at, was voicing those chords.
One of the most misunderstood songs ever. People have walked down the aisle to it, but it's not only, people, it's easy to say, oh, it's a stalker song, but.
Well, you actually it's from the point of view of the stalker, and you feel some empathy with the desperation of that person who's so desperately in love or absorbed with his obsession that he can't help himself. And it's more of a confession than a threat. And that's what makes it so poignant. And of course, Stingo loves it that people get it wrong and get married to it. When he wrote this dark, twisted, psychotic lyric, and people get it wrong, and that tickles him endlessly.
Another great bridge, one of the great bridges of its time. You can hear the desperation in his vocal, but I would argue that it's like what Ringo brought to the Beatles. What you guys brought to it you don't try to do too much. You can ruin a song like that.
Yeah, that was the mission, was to not ruin it.
Well, Wrapped Around Your Finger is another very obsessive song. Great payoff at the end. It's such a great story. The end is kind of that great switcheroo, devil on the deep blue sea behind me. The servant becomes the master. I just love that song and how it comes together. Did you ever talk about these songs and their meanings, or you just kind of approached it from the musical side?
That song is not one of my favorites. The reason for that was just the process. He pulled the song out. We recorded that one particularly quickly because it was very little. Didn't take him longer than a heartbeat to teach Andy the chords for that. And so we were straight into recording it. And I never figured out in that 20 minutes that I had how to get from the chorus back down into the verse. Or how to get from the verse up into the chorus. And of course, I figured that out live when we played it for years and years. I figured all that out later. But the recording, it was really raw. And in a way, that's a good thing because the track did not suck.
No.
But it was frustrating for me at the time that I didn't really come up with something better. But actually, once I get over that and I listen to it, it is kind of cool. The drum part. I just didn't feel that way at the time.
Wrapped Around Your Finger, I didn't like it at first when I heard it as a kid, bought the album and listened to it obsessively. It was probably one of my bottom 3 songs, even though bottom 3 songs on Synchronicity is top 3 for any other band I'd listen to. But over the years, I've really grown to appreciate it. I think it's such a majestic song. It's so incredible.
Yeah.
Not changing your mind?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he wrote some great songs, and this is one of them. But, some songs have got to come third.
Yeah, that's right. Well, King of Pain, I love the off.
Okay, love that song. That one works for me. That's so Sting as well. There's a tiny little blemish up there in this beautiful day. That's my heart. And that's just so Sting.
Yeah, I read that Trudy said that to him. He was saying there's a little black spot on the sun today. And she said, oh, and he's like, that's my soul up there. And she's like, oh, there you go, the King of Pain. But it's my destiny to be the King of Pain. He's like, wait a second.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that story, but that's very Trudy as well. King of Pain. That is so Sting. He is, I don't know if he's the king or the slave of pain. Probably both at the same time.
Well, tell me about that song. I love the offbeat bass drum pattern, and it's just such a cool song. The dynamics, again, it's what you guys did.
Well, it's the old formula there with a poignant verse and a kick-ass chorus.
Did you know when you guys were creating Synchronicity that this was going to be your Sgt. Pepper? I mean, this was going to be such a massive album. Did you know it for sure?
No, not specifically, but in general, we thought we were Lords of the Universe in just general arrogance. Like every other band, by the way, every band in the studio, or in the beginning, they assume they're going to conquer the world, or otherwise they'd leave the band. So this arrogance is shared with all of my brothers and sister musicians. But I didn't see it as Sgt. Pepper because we didn't have any orchestra. We didn't, we didn't take it beyond the three guys.
I mean that in terms of just being such a massive album that people would listen to for generations.
Well, unfortunately, we had expectations. Every album we did better than the one before it, and we assumed that this next album would do better than the one before it. And so it was. But to tell you the truth, I was surprised we even got as far as making the fifth album. The fourth album, Ghost in the Machine, was so difficult that I never thought we would, I thought, well, how can we ever go back into the studio again? But we did. And that speaks to old Stingo's loyalty. And it was tough for him, to make compromise. He'd write a perfectly good song, and then he'd have to bring it to the band who would mess it all up.
Was it true about the coin flip, about having you guys each having a song on there, and you were going to do a coin flip, and whoever won the coin flip, that you'd be able to have your songs, or all of them would be Sting's? I've heard a rumor.
No, I don't know that one. Well, one is that it was going to be either Miss Gradenko or Murder by Numbers. And we had a listening set. We didn't flip a coin. We listened to them back to back and chose Miss Gradenko. Half a century later, I'm thinking I would have chosen Murder by Numbers, which was like a B-side. And that's such a great song, every which way. And that was literally the first take. I mean, Andy came up with these chords at the dinner table. There really isn't any need for bloodshed. One night, and the drums are like 20 feet away because we recorded the drums in the dining room because the sound was real good. And let's do a take. And by the time they get downstairs, I've already covered the shorter distance to the drums, and I'm already starting that rhythm, just thinking about what the rhythm's going to be. And they get down to the studio, hit the tape and put the tape in record. I'm already playing. I'm already in progress when the tape starts rolling and recording. And they just kick in with the song. And that first time he ran it down is the record.
You guys had a lot of good songs on Synchronicity that didn't make it. I like Someone to Talk To as well. I thought that was very honest and open song, and Murder by Numbers, such a creepy song in the best possible way. Sting was well before his time with that one, with all the true crime and all the stuff that people are so into now with the documentaries and podcasts about true crime and serial killers. In history's great dark hall of fame. I always read that you guys were sitting there in Shea Stadium. You're like, it's not going to get bigger than this. There was rumors that you were already starting the next album. Were there any songs? Were there any fills and themes to it? Is that all a bunch of malarkey?
No. We needed a break. We all could see that there's life outside of this gilded cage. We wanted to partake thereof. I mean, the world was going by so fast in hyperdrive that if you reach out and try and hold on to anything, you'd lose an arm. And we just needed a break. And of course, nobody around us thought it was a good idea for us to have a break. And so that's probably why we continued making albums, even though it was so difficult for us. And we just finally got to, I think we were in Chicago and they were talking about extending the tour after Australia, and then we'll hit Latin America, and then we'll do another album. And finally we just said, Sting and I were talking and just said, God, we got to stop this. There's only one way off this. We got to melt down the golden cage and eat the golden goose, which we decided to do very amicably. And it was probably thinking that it was just going to be a sabbatical, but we had to kill it dead so that our other missions would not be squished and throttled at birth, and suffocated and starved. Just nothing outside of the band would get any traction with our management, record company, and everything. So we had to kill it.
Yeah, because there was no official breakup.
Miles, once again, he said, don't say if you say you're broken up, people will lose interest, but we want to keep on selling records, whether you do another show or not. We want to keep selling records. And so he persuaded us to not make any kind of announcement. But we went our separate ways. I went off and scored a movie for Francis Ford Coppola, and my life just turned into, I'd forgotten how fun it was to be in a studio making music without a battle over every creative aspect. Oh, it was heaven working with Francis and on a movie that was really cool, and making music to fit with a movie and drama. Oh, that's what I was put here on the planet to do.
Actually, the 40th anniversary of Synchronicity came and went, but apparently UMG is celebrating with a stellar package, both a CD box set and a vinyl set. Man, this vinyl set's amazing. It's dazzling sonic vinyl experience of the 4 LP Super Deluxe Edition. LP1 features the original album remastered from the source tapes. 2 and 4 offer a treasure trove of rarities. There's 7 12-inch B-sides, live recordings, unreleased alternate takes, demos, and 6 previously unheard songs. You got to get this. It has art prints, it's got new liner notes, everything. Such a great album. Thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about this all-time 80s masterpiece. What are your memories of the songs? Did you ever think Every Breath You Take was a love song? I think I got it from the very first moment, especially after seeing the Haunting video. But let's have a great discussion about this once-in-a-lifetime album. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe below. Love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, free chords.